Good morning. I'm Sharon, stepping in for Sue today on our Inside Scoop, and I'm here with Katie Hurley, who is an author and child and adolescent psychotherapist, who's the author of 4 books, I think, Katie, right? Including a brand new one this week called A Year of Positive Thinking for Teens. There it is. Now, Katie, is it a coincidence that this came out in 2020? Just when
Well, here's what's funny. It kind of is. My publisher actually asked me to write this book. I didn't pitch this book. They came for me and said, "Would you write this book?" And they asked me about 3 weeks before Los Angeles, where my hometown, where we went into lockdown for several months. And it was just 3 weeks before, and I kind of hemmed and hawed, and I thought, I don't know, is this the right time for this? Do I have time for this? Can I pull this off? And I said, yes, let's do it. It sounds fun. This is my jam. I love positive thinking. And then 3 weeks later, I wrote the whole thing while in lockdown.
wow.
So
Can you
it's
tell us
funny timing.
what it is and who it's for?
So yeah, it's funny because all my mom friends who've already bought it are saying, it's for teens, but I'm using it for myself. But it's a fun little book. You can see it's kind of designed small and fun and pretty for teens to like. But what I did is I broke down positive thinking and positive psychology and a lot of different things into little like bite-sized pieces. So for each day of the week, there's like a mantra or a strategy to use or some explanation of how your brain works and how negative thinking hijacks our brains and how you can get back to positive thinking and why that's healthy. So for each day of the week, and you could go through it day by day and say, oh, well, what's the prompt for October 15th? I'm going to think about that today. Or you can kind of just pick it up anywhere and flip through. And I deliberately designed it that way because, we know our teens are overwhelmed. So to throw a giant tome of a book at them, this is what will help you think better and, approach your goals from a more positive perspective. Just felt like they're not going to do that. They like social media because it's short and quick. So let's get them a book where they can have quick strategies, quick reminders, inspiring quotes and things that can help them day by day.
So you don't have to start on January 1st and go the way through. You can dip in, dip out as you feel like it.
You feel like it. And then there's even a leap day post.
Oh, that's cool. I think I did see that when I was looking because I was curious about what bonus advice there was there. The kind you only need every 4 years.
Right.
So what is the thinking behind positive thinking? Why is that so important to teens' health and happiness? What difference?
Yeah, research, a long history of research shows us that when people, teens, kids, adults, anybody, tap into positive thinking, they have better social relationships, they're more successful, they're better able to cope with stress and obstacles and upsets. They're more resilient. That's the buzzword that's all around the internet these days. Resilient. Resilience is built over a long period of time. So we're all kind of being shoved a lot of information on how can you make your kid resilient during a pandemic. Spoiler alert, you can't, but they can build their resilience over time and grow into resilient adults. And part of that is by learning how to cope with their negative thinking. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about positive thinking. So people think it's like just saying things like think positive and, well, what's a positive reframe on that? And that's really not how it works. I mean, the big first step to learning to tap into positive thinking is understanding and getting in touch with your negative emotions and being able to sit with them. This is called distress tolerance, and it's often something that's skipped over in child development, but it's really, really crucial. So learning to sit with our stress, to engage with it in an adaptive way, that's how we start to form positive thoughts. And when we do that, we're better able to cope with the negative things because, pandemic aside, this is dubious timing, of course, and great that I could put this out while kids are largely trapped at home still. But, even without a pandemic, teens go through so many ups and downs from middle school through college, into young adulthood. And very rarely do we actually give them the tools they need to cope. So this is packed with a lot of tools that are actionable, easy to understand, easy to use.
So you had mentioned sitting with our negative emotions. What does that look like if my kid, my teenager, is upset? sometimes it's hard, I want to sympathize, but I don't want them to wallow. I mean, sometimes it can make us as parents uncomfortable to sit with someone else's discomfort. How can we help kids to process those negative feelings, which there are naturally a lot of right now?
Yeah, and you kind of nailed it when you said it's hard for adults to sit with their teens' discomfort, and it is. And so you all know, I do have a teenager. I have a 13-year-old and a 12-year-old. So one teen and one emerging teen, and so I do know. My work with teens is one side of the equation for me, but I also have my own kids, and so I know how hard that is. As parents, we're really good fixers and we're really good empathizers, and we should be empathizing with them. We also, I keep saying this over and over again, but it's like, we really have to learn how to follow the 80-20 rule. We're listening 80% of the time and talking 20%. If we're always talking and we're always coming up with solutions, then we're kind of trying to sweep away those negative feelings. There's nothing wrong with anger. There's nothing wrong with sadness. There's nothing wrong with being overwhelmed. These are all being worried. These are all very healthy emotions that teenagers go through, and they will continue to go through. When they learn to be okay with that stuff, they'll learn how to cope in an adaptive way. It is hard when they wallow. I also feel like I'm saying a lot right now, just anything goes in a pandemic. So we want to get them out of them. We want to say, let's snap out of this. Let's do something to get out of this headspace. And there's something to that, there's something to, hey, let's go out for a walk, or let's make cookies, let's do something just to get out of our own heads for a minute. That's okay. But it's also okay to wallow right now. It's okay to feel like everything stinks. Just the other day, a freshman in high school said to me, you know what? Everything just sucks right now. And I said, I don't disagree. I think you're right. And she was like, are you allowed to say that? I said, well, I think I am. It's really, really hard.
So it sounds like part of that process is us saying, you don't have to fight it. It's normal to feel that way. Sometimes it seems like kids struggle with not only the feeling, but feeling like they shouldn't feel a certain way. And they shouldn't have those negative emotions.
Yeah, and then it creates more emotions because they feel shame and guilt, right? So it's like, I feel bad that I feel bad, and then I'm making other people feel bad, and so it's this horrible negative cycle. But I think the easiest catchphrase you all can remember is, the only way out is through. The only way out is through. We have to go through the hard stuff, and we have to engage with it. And when we learn to do that, we'll be more positive people.
Great. So thinking about this book, say one of us thinks, oh, this is a great idea for my kid. Do you have some ideas about the best way to present this to our child? Does it seem like an accusation, like you need positive thinking, or
no?
What's a way that we can share it with our kids?
Well, and one thing I've been saying in a lot of interviews this week as this book is coming out, and it's largely because of my friends and their response to it. Writing a book is like a terrible thing, because you put your whole heart and soul into it, and then you're like, oh my God, what if no one likes it? So, but a lot of my friends and family members have been like, wow, this is my favorite of the 4 books you've written, because it's just fun and it's engaging. And so what a lot of people are saying is they're doing this as a family. So buying it and saying, hey, I saw this on this great, TV show I was watching this morning, and I bought a copy, and we're gonna, one mom yesterday told me they read the prompt as a family the night before for the next day, so they can have that in their head for the next day. My son has been reading it at the breakfast table every morning. So, and just this morning, he read the prompt this morning, and it was something about taking small steps at a time towards your overall goals. And he goes, wow, that's really helpful. That makes a lot of sense. So, just doing it as a family, don't present it as an accusation. Say like, hey, you know what? We're stuck in this pandemic, and I found this cool book, and a lot of people are talking about it. So let's give it a shot and see how it goes. And then they might take it on their own and, read a little bit more of it on their own.
Right. I love the idea of doing it together. Sometimes it goes down easier if we say, I'm not handing this thing down to you, but whether it's a chore or whatever, let's do it together. Yep. Do you have a favorite entry, or did you have any trouble deciding what went where in this book?
I really did, because I felt like I always go on this tangent around this time of year, because I feel like in about 2 weeks, everybody's going to be talking about gratitude for about 6 weeks, and then it's going to go away. So I was like deliberately sprinkling gratitude activities and things toward the spring, because I feel very strongly that gratitude should not be a November, Thanksgiving, winter holidays thing, but it should be an everyday thing. So I did kind of, sprinkle things throughout. I'm not sure that I have a super favorite. I could flip through. I remember thinking very carefully about what went on my daughter's birthday and what went on my son's birthday, because I kind of wanted it to be things that reflected them a little bit, and they enjoyed seeing that. So I think, overall, you'll see a lot that sort of talks about being able to cheer yourself on. And we live in this time where me, I've been promoting empathy for years, and I travel around the country when I'm allowed to, teaching parents and teenagers about the power of empathy and how they can use empathy online, in their classrooms, in the community, et cetera. So I'm super big into empathy. But also, what I've noticed is that because of all the discussion about empathy and compassion, which are super important, kids are forgetting to take care of themselves and to feel okay with cheering themselves on. And we've got to be our own biggest cheerleaders in life. We really do. It's great when you have someone who cheers for you all the time. My husband is my absolute rock, who just pushes me forward and lifts me up and says, "You've got this no matter what." But I have to be able to cheer myself on and to say, I'm capable and I can do this stuff. And so I think you'll see a lot of stuff about that, and about the importance of teens and young adults engaging in self-care, because that has gone out the window. And you hear all these things about adults and the importance of self-care, and we need to be mindful, and we need to be doing this and that and the other, and exercising and water and all those things. Teenagers need that information. They really do, especially during a pandemic when they can't play their sports. They can't go to the extracurriculars they normally do. They can't engage with their friends in ways they normally would. They need to learn how to bob and weave during this time and really take care of themselves. I'm seeing a question that's asking, would it be relevant for young adults too? It absolutely would be relevant for young adults in that 20 to 25 age range, and college students especially. I think it would be helpful.
Great. And talking about the pandemic and the stresses of that, are you seeing in your practice that there are different issues coming up? Like, do you see that? What kind of changes do you see in how kids are doing? Like, is it a different set of issues, or is it the same issues but just different?
Right. It's similar and a little bit different. We knew that stress and anxiety were on the rise before the pandemic hit. That was well known. Those statistics were sort of skyrocketing. We don't have good numbers right now of those. There's been a couple of surveys that came out. Studies take a really long time. So I always encourage people to take things they read on the internet with a grain of salt. A survey is useful. It gives you a snapshot. It's not a study. But it's reasonable to assume that anxiety and depression rates are increasing across the board right now, as kids are engaging in this strange new world and trying to figure out how to manage it. The thing I'm seeing a lot of is just pervasive loneliness. And as practitioners, loneliness is one of those things that makes us go, I'm seeing a lack of hope, feelings of hopelessness, and feelings of helplessness. And those two things are red flags often for suicidal thinking and depressed thinking. So, I'm always on the lookout when I start to see those, nothing's ever going to get better. This is never going to end. That kind of talking is always, to me, a little bit of a flag that somebody needs extra support. And the loneliness factor is difficult. They are connecting as much as they can online. They're TikToking their way through the day. They're doing, Snapchat and DMing on Instagram, but all of these, and I actually love social media. So I always say that, because I think we're living in this time where people are like, oh no, that movie came out and now everybody wants to run away from social media. It is a good connection tool for teenagers, but it's also performative. It's almost always performative. So we have to remember that, because are you being your true self on social media all the time? Usually not. There are some groups where kids can connect with other kids who are anxious or depressed, or, having any sort of, different mental health issues. But you have to look for those. So if you're just posting to your feeds or snapping with your friends, chances are you're not really going deep. And that's where the loneliness comes from. Humans are social creatures and we need those deep, meaningful relationships.
And would you say because of that, that it's important for us to find in-person ways for our teens to socialize, even in the
I do
pandemic?
say that. And I have to be careful because we obviously this, we're not out yet of the woods and we know this. So I have to be careful about that. But taking a walk with masks on, research consistently shows that actually people connect more when they're facing, in the same direction, walking next to each other, because that awkward face contact, eye contact, making facial expressions, that goes away if you're looking forward and you're walking. So I'm telling teenagers, if your parents will let you, find a friend that you can go for a walk with, once or twice a week, so that you at least are, stay apart, wear your mask, but connect in person. Because it's gaming and social media are fine, but they're not really relationship builders. They're like the icing, they're like the sprinkles, on top of the cupcake. You got to have the cake, and to get the cake, you got to have the relationship. So, but the kids are Zooming one-on-one or FaceTiming one-on-one to at least have conversations, and parents always worry and they say, well, no one makes phone calls anymore. Well, you know what? They don't. They actually don't make phone calls anymore. That's
Right.
just how the world is now. So that's okay. A FaceTime is a phone call. It's a connection. Try not to interfere with that too much just because it's weird to you and you had to pull the cord into the bathroom and shut the door. Those days are over, and probably that's a good thing. So but it is important for them to find ways to connect in person if possible. And if, it depends on comfort level and the makeup of your family. If you have somebody who's at risk, obviously you're going to be more cautious.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about negative social interactions, because one of your previous books was No More Mean Girls, in which you talked about how to cultivate confident, compassionate girls who
Yep.
get along with other kids and who avoid that kind of bullying and negative interactions. What are you seeing now that with the pandemic has that kind of fallen away a little bit because of the separation, or is it still there online, or like are we seeing the negativity in the socializing?
So what kids are telling me is they're relieved they don't have to deal with the daily drama at school. They still would rather be in school, but there is a sense of relief that I don't have to deal with the lunch table. I don't have to deal with the in-person drama that can occur, the rumors that start quickly, all of that sort of stuff, or being left out or not included in person. So some of that is down, but they're still dealing with a fair amount of cyberbullying. And it's even just it's very hard. I believe that teachers are doing their best. I really do. I 100% think our teachers are in a really difficult position right now, and they're doing their best with what they have. But it's difficult. From the spring, we were in this crisis learning mode, and everybody was learning really quickly how to use Zoom or Google Hangouts or whatever they were doing, to get kids sort of together learning in the same place online. Now they came back, and breakout rooms are the thing, right? And the kids, they don't like the breakout rooms. They're hard. You feel like they get stuck in a room. They get randomly selected into a room with a bunch of people. Often they don't know them that well. A lot of stuff happens in those breakout rooms before the teachers pop in. So those have become kind of a not great thing. And then just the normal social media stuff is kind of on steroids right now because that's all they have. So especially the ones who aren't getting out at all to take a walk with a friend or see a friend. And then everybody's different, and that's good, right? Everybody's different, but there will be groups of kids who are allowed to be out, not wearing masks, doing their thing, large groups roaming around towns, taking pictures everywhere, all over social media. And then the ones who are following the rules are stuck at home feeling like they're totally left out, and, they're the only ones. And now they're losing their social position. And where are they going to fit into the group if and when they ever do get back into the classroom? Some places are in classrooms in a hybrid, as so there's hybrids. There's a lot of kids are virtual. In Los Angeles, we're still virtual at this point. It's just difficult. So I think, I have said consistently throughout this pandemic, stop counting the hours of screen time. We have to stop counting the hours right now because it's maddening if we try to do that and sort it out because they are learning online. But we do need to continue the conversations about social media, about how you can be an empathic, compassionate person on social media, about how you can be a helper, how you can be an uplifter, because, you know, we have to do that. We have to raise the kids that will go online and lift other kids up if they see something going down that isn't cool and isn't nice. And the more that we do that, that takes frequent conversations. You know, social media conversations are never one and done. And the thing to do is to say, hey, what's new on Snap? What's new on TikTok? Did you see any funny TikToks today? What have you been watching? Who's your favorite TikToker? Who's your favorite Instagram influencer right now? I mean, learn the language, talk to them about it, meet your kids where they are. If you got a kid who only plays video games, play the video games, you know,
Yeah.
like I don't want to do it either. I get it, but play the video games. You know what I'm not at all interested in? Fantasy football. You know what I know a lot about right now? Fantasy football. So we have to meet the kids where they are, because that's how we can start peppering the conversation and talking about cyberbullying. What does that look like? What do you do if you see it? Do you even know what it is?
Yeah, because otherwise they're going to be like, they wouldn't know where to begin talking to you about it because you don't get their worlds.
You don't get it. Yeah.
This morning I was invited to watch a 10-minute video and I was like, I don't really have time. And then the teenager was like, oh, come on. And I did. But it's hard, it's important to be reminded to say yes whenever we can to those things. So that's really helpful.
It's true, and I know it. I mean, I even have a fantasy football team, and I could care less about how they're doing, you know. But it's like I have to force myself to care and make time for that, because that's an important, connection right now. I got to watch or listen to the music that I don't necessarily like, because that's a connection with my other child. So
right, Elizabeth is saying playing video games with your kids helps a lot. I should
it
probably
really
try that. I bet my teenager would be thrilled.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any final thoughts you want to leave us with, Katie?
I think it's just really important right now to keep reminding ourselves that we're doing a great job in extraordinary circumstances. It's really easy for parents to be hard on ourselves. We feel like we failed this, we failed that, this didn't work, that didn't work. If we always look at the failures, we all have failures. That's resilience is built upon failure after failure after failure after failure. It's getting back up. It's trying again. It's figuring out a new plan. That's how we become resilient people and learners and stuff. And even as parents, it's how we become resilient parents. So we have to cut ourselves some slack and say, you know what? Today was hard. Tomorrow is another day. I'm going to try again. I'm doing my best during a pandemic, working from home with kids who are home all the time. And I'm doing as much as I can do. And we have to be kind to ourselves. When we do that, we show them what it means to be positive thinkers. We show them what it means to get through hard things. We can all do hard things. We're all doing it every single day of the week right now. And sometimes we forget. And I think we need to remind ourselves of that. And we need to take care of ourselves and cheer ourselves on, like I was talking about earlier.
Yes.
Pros and cons of social media. I'm seeing a question. There it is. Okay. Oh, this is a loaded question, Chris.
Kids, right, Katie?
Yes, it is perfect. It's the age of my kids. So my 12-year-old does not have any social media. And most of I would say a lot of his friends at this point have at least Instagram, and a lot of them have Snap. Here's my thing. A lot of middle schoolers communicate on Snap right now. As my good friend John Duffy says, Snap is the road rage of the internet. And it is. It's too easy to get negative. It's too easy to go back and forth. They think everything disappears. They forget that screenshot, you're always one screenshot away from a mistake that follows you forever. Now, I don't like to say that to kids over and over again, because that feels scary and overwhelming. And, we don't want kids to think they make one error and they've ruined their lives. I mean, that's terrible thinking, right? But that's the truth that we have to hold in our brains as we're thinking about how to help our kids engage with this stuff. Right now, my 13-year-old has Instagram. Now, Instagram is not without its faults, because sometimes the comments can be awful. Sometimes the DMs can be awful if kids are not getting along. Here's why I like it. if your kid has a certain interest, like she's an artist, so she really likes to follow all kinds of different artists. She follows different artists from all over the world. She's been super hopped up because this person that she's doing for Person I Admire, who lives in the Middle East and is an artist and very female positive, has been going back and forth, has been responding to her comments. So this has been very inspiring for her. She loves the art. She comments on it. The artist comments back. So that's healthy. That's interesting. She follows interesting people in a field that she's interested in. I don't love influencer culture. I think we've gone off the rails completely with, that sort of thing. But I follow, for instance, the Boston Celtics for my son, so that, when Jason Tatum posts something interesting that he's doing, some sort of community service thing, or even just something about being, with his family and stuff, I can show him those things. And he can see that these people that he looks up to and that he likes to follow are good humans doing good things out in the world. I think people ask me all the time, what's the perfect age for social media? The perfect age per brain development is 16, truly. That's when they have enough of the prefrontal cortex developed to make some decent decisions. They'll still make some mistakes, but they can really slow down and think. It's not realistic. They love it in middle school, so it becomes a personal family choice. I say on-ramp them with Instagram. I prefer to wait till 13. I know that in some ways the age restrictions the social media companies came up with were sort of arbitrary. Somebody decided on 13, so everybody got on board with 13. But I prefer to wait, because for me, I think kids need to learn that there are rules in place. And when we start breaking the rules and changing our birthdays to break the rules, we're teaching them the workaround. And that becomes part of how they function in the world. Well, okay, I'm supposed to do this, but what's the workaround? Let me figure out the cheat to get around it. Is that really the message we want to send our kids? I don't think so. I prefer to onboard them with Instagram because I think it's the most user-friendly, and the teens are on it. They like to do stories instead of posts. That's fine. They like to shout out happy birthdays in their stories. It can be really fun, and it can be, just a fun way for kids to connect. I'd hold off on Snap. I would just hold off on Snap in middle school. I think there's some good, but mostly not.
Very helpful. That's terrific, Katie. Can you hold up your book one more time and tell us where we can find you on the internet? What's the best way to connect with with what you're up to?
Well, so you can find information about my books and speaking and things I'm doing at practicalkatie.com. But I would say if you're looking to just connect with me and keep up with me, Instagram, I'm Katie F. Hurley at Instagram, and Katie Hurley LCSW on Facebook, where I post a lot of different articles and information written some by me, but a lot by my colleagues and just really smart people in the field of mental health. So that's a great place to look for information.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll keep up with you for sure. All right.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. Bye.